Hey guys, welcome to episode 171 of Radio A15, the podcast dedicated to examining the work of writer-director J.J. Abrams, as well as his greater Bad Robot universe. I'm your host for this week. My name is Marcelo Inostroza. I'm joined, as always, by my fellow co-host, Matt Crandall. And on today's edition of the show, we will continue to discuss the short-lived TV series Undercovers. Today, we'll be discussing episode 7, entitled Assassin. So, Matt, what's the deal? Is it because I'm Canadian?
So, definitely a funny line. Definitely a funny line in this. And I gotta tell you that Assassin, the 7th episode, I actually, for the most part, kind of dug this episode. But I'm gonna tell you, they did two things, one that I liked and one that I kind of hate, and that is, if you are going to bring in a well-known guest star, I'm going to assume they are the bad guy. So then when it turns out that they are the bad guy, it kind of drains any of the, excitement or revelations of your story, because as soon as this guy showed up, I'm like, well, this has got to be the real bad guy, because early on in this episode, Samantha runs in to this guy whose name is Matthew Hunt. Now, Hunt, immediately, we are like, okay, they want us to be thinking that this guy might be like a super spy because of Ethan Hunt, which obviously has Bad Robot ties. But this character, Matthew Hunt, is played by David Anders, a.k.a. Sark from Alias, okay? So we're bringing in the big bad, one of the big bad dirtbag turncoat agents from Alias is fucking showing up, and I'm like, well, he's obviously the bad guy. Everything they're doing, and Hoyt is investigating and checking all these photos, and they're like, we think maybe this guy's the bad guy, and I'm like, Sark is in every one of these photos, and he's supposed to just be a Canadian journalist or whatever the hell. And I'm like, come on, like this is the guy. Everybody knows this is the fucking bad guy. So when we finally get to like, oh no, he's the bad guy, it's like, well, no shit. So like, I did like it because I like that he's here, and anybody who didn't watch Alias, he might be just as popular now because he was on iZombie for its entire run, as he was, at the time he was just the Alias guy. and him showing up, but when it's like they're trying to investigate and Sam is breaking into safes, they're doing all this stuff, and I'm like, it's Sark. It's Sark is the bad guy. Stop the press, stop what you're doing. It's Sark. Sark is here. Of course he's the bad guy.
I really, really like this episode like you have. But I like it for a completely kind of different reason, or roundabout way reason. And that reason is this. The storytelling seems to be getting better in my mind, because I don't know if they listened to our complaints early on the season, but they are beginning to understand that the audience doesn't give two shits about the main case of the week. And they're spending less time on the main case of the week, and they're spending more time with the Blooms and with the other bits and bobs that they have to deal with because of the mission of the week. Are you feeling that, or am I completely off the reservation on this?
No, I think you're exactly right. I think that's accurate.
And another thing that they did in this episode that I particularly really liked, when they did the briefing, do you remember when was it me, or was it you, the one that said the mission briefings should have everybody there? Like, it should be Shaw, it should be Leo, and it should be Hoyt. They all should be there. And in this mission briefing for this specific episode, Leo was actually at the mission briefing. So I was like, oh my God, they're actually listening to us. I don't know how they could do that, but it's awesome. So there was a lot to like about this episode, but listen, I also am with you 110%. The minute I saw Sark in this episode, I was like, oh, really? You couldn't have picked another guy? That guy is a bad guy. I like you. I was screaming it out. I was screaming out. I was screaming it at the television. I was like, "There's no need for this. He's the bad guy. He's the one you want. He's the one you need to go get." The other thing that I loved about this episode, it opened up in a very Alias style kind of thing, right? Showing us one thing, but then rewinding and showing us that that one thing actually led to something else. What did you think about all those positives that I just laid out? Do you think I'm completely crazy?
This episode did a lot right. And even the laziness of casting Sark as the bad guy, I can get over because it is fun to have him here, even if it would have been more fun for it to be us thinking that he was bad and it being so damn obvious that then it turns out he was actually good would have been like a nice twist. But I did think that Leo being along from the jump was a little bit better than them like running into him or having him have to intervene halfway through the mission. I thought that was good. And I did like when, you know, they were doing the fake murder and Leo was there and putting all this shit on. So like, I liked all that. I thought that was all good. Bizarrely, this was the debrief after the mission. Shaw, who they have had a few meetings with Shaw when he's in his hotel and he's waiting for his room service, and they kept that gag going. And I was like, he's still in a hotel and he's wearing a robe the whole time. And I'm like, this guy's still fucking in this hotel in a robe waiting for room service. Like, is this like supposed to be a running joke, or like did cranky old Gerald McCraney just be like, I ain't fucking coming to set 18 days in a row, and they just shot him out in like one location where he was just always wearing a robe and he was always in this hotel to get all of his scenes for like 5 episodes in.
I really think that when it comes to Shaw and the way that he's been perceived in the show, I would really be interested in if the writers had him have some kind of home life, right? To see him go home and to see that he has somebody that he's responsible for, and see that he has a wife or he's taking care of younger kids. I think that would help make his character a little bit more rounder, because he's essentially, like I've said in previous weeks, he's the voice on the record, right? There's not much to Shaw except I'm a grumpy old man and I'm a good character actor. That's it. So I really would like if they find some way to feed his character out and to make him more compelling. Listen, guys, I know we have one season to play with, but I'm a fan of the show. I want to see the show I want to keep seeing the show be better than it was last week. Now, I know that's a false errand, but I have hope, I guess.
Yeah, and as much as I did like this episode, it still falls into a lot of the same traps that I don't like, that I think they set us up where like it can be so interesting, and they always swerve, because at the beginning of this episode, someone from Samantha's past shows up and she's like, "Oh, Sam, I can't believe you've done this." And we find out that this is like the friend in everybody's friend group who is kind of like a frenemy that like is so annoying that Sam partly thinks this woman showed up just to see if Sam was failing at this business. And like, she's like, "Oh no, like I'll help you. I'll cater this thing." And it seems like, oh, this is going to be an important subplot that Sam has to cater for this old acquaintance who, like, you know, they're kind of frenemies. They've kind of fallen off. But then Lizzie just takes it over and we never hear about it again until the end. And Lizzie's like, "Oh, it went fine. I overcharged her. Ha, fuck her." And I'm like, that was it? Then why did this woman even have to show up? Like, it really just felt like we were killing time. But I kept thinking, I want the cover identity stuff to play into it more. I want more of what the sister is doing, what the catering company is doing, how they're balancing all these things together, because I would like to see Sam have to run around to make sure that the catering goes well for a lady that she fucking can't stand, but they have a lot of friends in common, so she can't blow it off. Like, I think that is an interesting setup where somebody comes out of your past and you're like, oh, I never thought I would see this person again. They always thought I was an asshole. And then you have to like rise to the occasion. So I just don't know why we keep setting up interesting catering subplots that are not in the show. We always then just pick up at the end and we find out how it went by somebody telling us.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you on this point 100% because when this woman got introduced, this screaming sort of alpha woman, I really thought that that was a setup for a potential job, or I thought that that was a setup for this woman being a spy for another organization and the Blooms having to do a mission. Ready, Matt? This probably going to excite you. The Blooms having to do a mission with their catering company. That would give us exactly what we wanted because that would put everybody in danger and bring everybody onto the table. How awesome would that be?
That would be great. And again, you are right. You are right. I think that they introduced it. Like, I know why they introduced this, and it's because we find out that the teacher that they had in common is the one who recruited Sam. And she then sees shades of that teacher in the political speaker that they have to protect. But I kept thinking, oh, this is totally a Sydney Bristow kind of thing where, you know, she was at university and then got recruited, that I did think maybe this, you know, whoever Karen from the past is going to have also been recruited by that guy. And I kept thinking they were setting us up, you know, her mentor died in a mysterious car accident. Well, Alias used that shit every other week to fake people's death through a car accident. So I kept expecting, as she was seeing shades of that professor in the political guy, I kept expecting by the end that professor would actually come around and still be alive. And I am starting to wonder if that's part of the long game. That professor who was part of the agency, who brought Sam in, who was very important to her, who died mysteriously in a car accident, is not going to actually be responsible for the reason the Blooms are back. So I do think that maybe that's why they had this whole thing kind of start to weave its way, because that's a Bad Robot trick, is the, you know, oh, where's Vaughn? He's died in a car accident. Well, no, he didn't. Right? So like, I just kept thinking when they're like, oh yeah, our professor, he died in a car accident. I'm like, no, he didn't. And the fact that Sam is like, yeah, he did. I was like, bullshit. That doesn't happen.
You have a great point, but I'm going to go just a little bit further with it. You mentioned that that's a Bad Robot trope where Bad Robot will say, hey, look, Vaughn died in a car accident. He's dead. You know, next season, look, he's fine. What if Sam's professor and the individual that recruited her for the agency, what if the professor guy is somebody who we've already heard, but we haven't seen? What if he is Mr. Kelvin?
And that would make sense because, like I said, I feel like they're setting us up that character is going to be more important in the reveals, which also made me start to think that maybe this was when they knew that the show was not going to last, because they're like, fuck it, bring Sark in. Fuck it. Let's start to put our cards on the table on what's actually going on here as like the last ditch effort. So I feel like maybe this was, or at least this was when it had premiered. And I said a few weeks ago that usually it's like a 6-episode bumper or a 5-episode bumper back in the day. And so I'm like, this is when they saw the ratings were not lost ratings. They were not even fringe ratings, I don't think. So I think this was where they were like, oh shit, we got to start doing something. So I think you're right that maybe that's going to play a bigger part. And I not related to the main story, I did think Hoyt had a few funny moments in this. There's a moment where Steven gives him props and then Hoyt pulls out his phone and he's like, can you say that again now that I'm recording? Like, I'll just give you the prompt. And Steven's like, no, fuck you.
Yeah. The other great Hoyt moment is when they're already on the main mission and they're all in a nightclub. Sam and Steven are upstairs surveilling a camera, and Hoyt's on the bottom drinking like a martini wet. And Sam asks Hoyt for a status update, and Hoyt is distracted by this nice woman in her rear end, and he's like, "Everything's fine down here." It's just great. um, the other question I wanted to ask you, I mean, I just thought about this while you were giving me your ideas and your points about where this could go. It is really horrible when you're a writing staff and you get canceled in the middle of your story that you want to tell. But do you think, as a writer, when you get canceled, do you think that that sort of like frees you up to do things that you were too afraid to do when you still understood that, oh, maybe I'll be able to keep telling the story for X amount of years?
Yes, it does. It does. But I think in a previous episode, I mentioned like, but also when you know that it's getting canceled, you don't want to launch all your A material into a sinking ship. So like it gives you freedom that this also could be like, if you've got like some weird idea in the back of your mind, you're like, all right, well, now I can do all my weird shit because I can try it out here, and this show's on its way out.
The other thing that I was really disappointed with, or I've been disappointed with for the past couple of weeks, a few episodes ago, we found out that Sam's sister was a recovering alcoholic. I really, really want more of that. I would really love to see more of that. There was this whole episode. I think it was last week. Sorry, guys, my memory's for shit. There was this whole episode where Sam and Steven were supposed to be at her 90-day sober party, and they missed it because they were on a mission.
Yep.
And the regret that Sam felt for that was great. Google played it great, but then they pushed it on the rug, and they haven't brought that back up again. I thought that could be a great source of tension for the two sisters, and then Sam's sister could start to question herself. Why is she always away all the time? And why am I here running this business that's not mine and that's my sister's? Something is going on here. So that could cause Sam's sister to investigate and to discover that everything isn't as it seems with Sam.
I think those are great points, and I do think that we are going to somehow get there. But I am surprised that, again, they just didn't want to do anything that carried over, that you had to have seen a previous episode. And even so much as there's a scene with with Lizzie and Leo, where like it almost seems like it's the first time they're meeting, but we know that they have met previous. And then also Sam tells Steven, like, you got to tell Leo to not fuck my sister. And he's like, yeah, I've been meaning to talk to Leo about this. And so like we maybe are thinking that there is something going on with those two that we don't know about, but then they give us a scene that kind of makes it seem like there's not anything going on. And I'm just like, well, what is it? Because I'm fine with mystery of the week, mission of the week, standalone, but like when they are not carrying over important character beats, like being hurt that your sister didn't show up to your sober ceremony, that seems like a bridge too far, because people would not forgive and forget so easily in a week. Like even in Showtime, it's not supposed to be that long of time has passed, right? So I think you're right. Like they need to, without making everything feel like it doesn't matter, they need to refocus some of this stuff and make it more important.
It doesn't make sense that Sam's sister would be so understanding and so it doesn't make sense that she would acquiesce to her sister in that way. When somebody, and Meta said this before, but I need to say this to make another point. When somebody has an important event in their life, like a birthday or a 90-day server or 90-day sober celebration, that's a touchstone in someone's life. So it's very, very important that the people closest to them and the people most important to them are there. And the fact that Sam and Steven weren't there, that says a lot about what Sam thinks about her sister, which we know isn't the truth. But how can her sister understand that the reason why Sam is doing this is to protect her sister? But she doesn't know that. There's no possible way that she can know that. So if that was still a thing, like Matt said, that would be a great source of tension between the two of them, and you can use that to lead into other storylines that aren't going to go anywhere.
I think you're exactly right, and we're gonna have to see how it shakes out now that we are about to be in like the absolute home stretch. And I do think, you know, I get frustrated because I like the characters so much and we just don't get enough character moments. But the through line, even with all the action in this of Sam seeing shades of her former professor in this leader, wanting to do the right thing, even if there is a cost to it, so much so that she puts herself in danger and, you know, is held hostage by Sark because she thinks that the man who is doing the political speech is like a good man and wants to make sure no harm becomes him. I think does show us that she's willing to stand up for what she believes in when it counts. And even if it's a great personal cost, she does have like a code. So I did think we learned a bit about her character on the mission. I just wish we can start making that neater and more impactful.
Sam is actually my favorite character in the show, and the reason that Sam is my favorite character in the show is Sam to me is very reminiscent of a previous leading ladies in the bad robot, you know, iconography. She reminds me of, and this comparison is justified. I completely wanted to make this comparison before you guys said it, because you guys are gonna probably say, of course you did. She reminds me a lot of Sydney Bristow, but a Sydney Bristow that is attached and that isn't so wishy-washy with the people that she loves. Because I love Sydney Bristow, but Sydney was very, very much about the mission and that whole thing, right? And Sam is about the mission, but she's about her husband and her family and her business and all that other stuff. But she reminds me very, very much about, very, very much of Sydney Bristow. But another thing about Sam that I like is that, like Matt just said, she is very, very put together. She's very, very brave, and she is willing to put her body in harm. Not only this episode by being kidnapped by Stark, by being kidnapped by the bad guy in this episode, but as Matt said, in various occasions throughout this series, when Steven would volunteer to save his wife's life, Sam would say, no, I can do that. And it's really starting to bother me how much Steven lets his love for his wife affect his job. Because it is apparent that he overprotects his wife. And I'm like, dude, I know you love her, but she's a capable agent. She can kick your ass. Let her do her job. Like, I understand, and you'll have to let me know how you feel. I understand that she's your wife, and I get that. But you have to understand that she's extremely capable. You know that. You live with a woman. So at some point, you're going to have to trust her to do the right thing. And I think that worrisome angle that Steven has is going to come back to bite him in these last episodes. Do you think that at all, or do you think that I'm wishy-washy again?
No, I think you got a really good point. I would say I was frustrated at Steven not being that protective in this episode, where like he could have taken the shot a million times and he doesn't. And he's like, I don't have a clean shot. And I'm like, fucker, you had like 10 opportunities. You could have taken Sark out from this tower and you didn't. But obviously Sam ends up being okay because she is a talented spy and other help comes. But I was just like, there's just like a million times he could have taken the shot and he doesn't. And I'm like, dude, you're making yourself look like you aren't good at this job. And that really frustrated me. But I think you're right that he needs to let her do her own thing, because she was perfectly fine before he showed up, and she's capable, if not more capable, despite what Hoyt might say.
A small note about Hoyt. I'm very on and off with Hoyt from episode to episode, but it really bothers me that he calls her Mrs. Bloom. I hate that. I'm like, She has a name. Use it.
Yeah, Mrs. Agent Bloom or whatever is kind of derogatory.
Yeah, it's like I don't. It's like, dude, she has a name. Samantha Bloom. Use it.
They wouldn't do that now. Now he would not call her that. Even if he was obsessed with Steven, they wouldn't belittle her in that way because they know that somebody on TikTok would roast them.
Which would be me. But I think that'll wrap it up for this edition of Radio 815. But listen, guys, if you like the show that we do here and you want to get in contact with us to tell us how awesome we are, or if you have suggestions about things that we should cover in the future, all revolving around the Bad Robot universe, you can send us an email. Our email is radio815@aol.com, or you can reach out to us on X, Twitter, if you call it either of those names. We are at JJ Universe 815. If you want to chat with me about Undercovers or anything in the Bad Robot universe, I can be reached at QuickFanatic88, and that is on X or Twitter. But Matt, if the good folks at home want to do their best to reach you, you are kind of elusive these days, how can they go about doing that?
They can do that by logging some movies with me on letterboxd.com. My username is MDC3000.
All right, guys. So with that out of the way and being done with, until next time, as I often say, we'll talk back soon.
Radio 815 is a Balloonhead Productions presentation in association with Killer Newt Productions.